Site. So another option that is also possible for timber is mass engineered timber. So you utilize the timber for structural materials that you can replace concrete and steel in the buildings. And there are mainly two different product categories. One is called CLT, stands for cross-laminated timber, and the other one is called glued laminated timber, in short, glulam. Here, just to give you a brief example of what I'm talking about. So on the left picture, you see the columns. Usually in Vietnam, you would build them with concrete or steel. But now with the engineered wood and with the advanced technologies, we can utilize the timber, glue it together, and then have properties that are similar to concrete or steel. The big benefit, this one here, is just to give you a comparison between acacia, which I understand you have a lot in Vietnam, and to the other timber species on the right, spruce. So spruce is the usual timber species that we use in Europe for timber construction. But now if you see at the growing speeds, until we can harvest the spruce, it takes 35 years or even longer. And the diameter after let's say 8 years is only 15 centimeters of spruce. But of acacia, after 8 years you have already a diameter of 19 centimeters and the height is almost double the height of spruce. So you have a very fast growing timber species here, which is very advantageous to the one that we have in Europe if you think about the growing speeds. What's the current market value of the products that I'm talking about here? So for the manufacturers that are listening, or the traders and the associations, if we talk about the glued laminated timber, then if you think about adding value to your products, you might know your current prices of your products per cubic meter. So for glued laminated timber, the current price in Europe is 750 euro per cubic meter. And usually you can produce one beam can be up to 35 meter length and 2 meter high. So that's one piece.
1 meter length, 2 meter high.
35 meter length. 35. Yeah. Then besides the beams, there are the panels that you can use for walls or ceilings or floors. So they are also prefabricated in the factory. And you also cut out already the windows, the doors, and then you just bring them on site. And if you compare with concrete, usually you bring the cement on site and then you pour it and then you need to let it dry for 3 weeks. But here you have a dry construction method, so it's much more efficient. It's like a Lego. So you bring the pieces on site and then you just connect them together. And for these panels, usually you can do up to 16 meter length and 4 meter height. So 4 meter because one story of a building is between 3 and 4 meters. And the price currently for this one here is in Europe 650 euro per cubic meter. About the global market of these products, so here is for CLT. CLT is again is this slab here. The global market is in 2017 it was 603 million US dollar, and it's a very fast growing market. So by 2024 the market is expected to reach 1.6 billion. And in terms of production, until today 60% of these products are produced in Europe, but for the future America is now doing more, and Indonesia is starting, and I think there is also a big opportunity for Vietnam to tap onto this potential for mass engineering.
Vâng, cái hình này cũng muốn dùng ở đây một chút để mọi người nhìn thấy cái cơ hội, tức là maybe also talk about the change in the law in France.
Yeah. So for the
tôi có một cái đơn hàng mẫu ấy, để phát. 2-3 môn.
Ly nhắc cho bạn nào thắc mắc thì là
Okay, about the trend itself, here we have the numbers. Recently, France, they have a new regulation for all the new public buildings. So all the new public buildings have to have in the future minimum 50% has to be with wood in the building. Then we have currently Singapore. The Singapore government adopted the mass engineered timber for the construction around 4 years ago, and the reason for that was productivity. So during your project that you, for example, build a house, and then you have your real estate investor behind you, so he wants to have the tenants in the house as fast as possible, so he gets the money back as fast as possible. So if you think about traditional construction method or timber construction, with timber construction you can save up to 35% in time for the overall project. So you're much more efficient during the construction, which means that the investor of the building can rent out the building much faster to the tenants. So that's the main reason why Singapore adopted the timber. The other reason is sustainability, because 1 cubic meter of timber can store 1 ton of CO2 naturally. And then if you compare it to traditional methods like concrete is like the opposite, right, or steel. So in terms of climate change reduction, building more with timber, if you source the timber from sustainable forests, is very important of course, then you also contribute to mitigating the climate change. To give you some examples on the projects, now we talked on the products and the prices. Okay, then here are, on these slides are just some examples. Sometimes when we show examples only from Europe, then you say, that's not the same climate like we have in Vietnam. But luckily, the Singapore government now already built a few big projects, and Vietnam and Singapore have very similar climates in terms of rain and in terms of the weather itself. So on the top right you see that was the first project, is a span of 72 meters, and the structural member is engineered timber. And on the bottom, on the left and the middle is currently in production and under construction in Singapore. This will be the biggest timber building in Asia. So it's a 5-story building, but the amount of timber they put into it will be the biggest in Asia. And here we have some other references for projects. This is an in-house development that we did in the hearing. So it's a dome structure that you can have with a diameter of up to 200 meters. So the diameter can be up to 200 meters, and your structural material is all with engineered timber. Of course, if you think about how do you transport these huge members, so usually each member is only 12 meter length, so that it can nicely fit into the containers. And then we have steel connectors that connect between the timber members. This one here is another example of a covering of a train station in Switzerland. So that's the main train station in Bern, in the capital. And the roof covering is with a curved blue lamp structure. Of course, on top of this structure you will have later like a covering, a cladding or a glass. This one is an example of a different application. It's like a walkway, treetop walk, where you also use engineered timber as the members. Another example going away from the form structure is modular construction. So the benefit of using timber is only 20% of the weight of concrete. So if you can do modular construction based on timber elements, later on during assembly, if you think about your crane and the equipment that you need to use and the speed to erect your buildings, you're much faster with the timber variation because it's much lighter. And here is the last reference is like a multi-sports hall where you also have a curved roof structure. Yeah, so that's it for my short presentation. To give you a brief overview of what technical wood means and the opportunities for Vietnam to adapt to a few of the possibilities for technical wood.